Chapter 41 The New Leader of Mutants. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The attribute panel, which was like a holographic projection screen, immediately appeared in Richard's sight. Host, Richard. Race, human, alpha-level mutant. Current template, Sephiroth, fusion degree 45%. Exclusive equipment, authentic sword, phantom sword. Skills, 8 swords flash LV3, earth shaking LV3, sky shaking LV3, Zancian LV3, IAI/LV3, prison gate LV3, black magic crystal LV3, thunder LV3, blizzard LV3, flame LV3, wind LV3, dimension/LV3. Magic, 523/2000, recover. 450 points per hour. X-Gene superpowers, 19. Alpha, Plunder, super strength, super physique, super self-healing, teleportation. Beta, energy emission, energy absorption, invisibility, supervision, telepathy, giant body, gravity binding, thermal vision, air bullet, flying, attack transfer, mind movement. Delta, beast intuition, bone claws. Task, none. Storage space, enabled. When he upgraded the skill to level 3, the system cancelled the original proficiency display and only displayed the level. Unless he specifically opened the skill description, the system would not actively display the specific proficiency of the skill. In addition, after the skill was upgraded to level 3, he could finally control the consumption of the skill at will, in other words, control the power of the skill at will. He can now freely adjust the power of the skill between level 1 and level 3 according to the actual situation, and the consumption of magic power will also change according to the actual power of the skill. Although the system did not give a corresponding explanation, he could roughly guess the reason. If he had only released skills like playing games before, then after upgrading his skills to level 3, he had mastered these skills to perfection. To put it simply, even if there is no help from the system, he can now use these abilities at will, instead of just choosing whether to release skills like playing games. If there is anything he is not satisfied with, it is that in the past 3 months, the system has not issued any new tasks, so he has not been able to get new character template skills. After taking a look at his current fusion degree, a thought flashed through his mind. From the point of view that the system has not issued new tasks for 3 months and he has not awakened new skills, the fusion degree of 50% should be a watershed. When the template fusion degree exceeds 50%, the system should issue new tasks. Of course, it is not ruled out that he will automatically awaken skills such as the one-winged angel form, supernova, heartless angel, and destiny declaration. After imagining himself performing the one-winged angel form in his mind, Richard's face showed an expectant expression. After browsing the skills, his eyes fell on the X-Gene superpowers. Just as he initially guessed, psychic abilities such as mind isolation, mind charm, and life-threatening suggestion can be fused and strengthened into a more comprehensive telepathic ability. More than a month ago, after killing a female agent of the Mutant Affairs Department, he successfully plundered telepathic abilities. To be precise, he plundered beta-level telepathic abilities. The moment he plundered telepathic abilities such as mind isolation, mind charm, and hypnotic suggestion began to merge and strengthen the newly plundered telepathy. If we only look at the level, his current telepathy is not as good as Professor X and the White Queen, but he didn't pay much attention to this. Although his current telepathy is only beta level, as long as he continues to plunder other psychic abilities, it is only a matter of time before his telepathy is upgraded to alpha level. Telepathy is not a particularly rare ability. In addition to Professor X and the White Queen, there are many psychics in the world. This means that he doesn't need to worry about not being able to plunder other psychic abilities. Not only that, as long as he kills enough psychics, or kills Professor X and the White Queen, it is not impossible for his telepathy to be upgraded to the Omega level. Judging from the number of X-Gene superpowers, his superpowers have not increased much, but in terms of strength, he is more than a little stronger than 3 months ago. Now, even if he does not use the skills of the character template, there are not many mutants who can be his opponents with only the X-Gene superpowers. After browsing the X-Gene superpowers, he closed the attribute panel and performed telepathy. In just a moment, he disappeared from the depths of a messy forest and returned to his current residence. Because he had an S-level wanted order issued by the Department of Mutant Affairs and had a flowing silver hair that was difficult to disguise, he lived away from the crowd for the past 3 months, unless he wanted to buy daily necessities. He basically would not enter the city. Not only that, even if he went to the city to purchase daily necessities, he would use beta-level telepathy to freeze everyone in the supermarket. More importantly, after purchasing daily necessities, he would go to the next city, not giving the Mutant Affairs Department a chance to follow up. After performing teleportation and returning to his current residence, he slowly prepared lunch. The place where he currently lived was a small wooden house in the forest. Although he didn't know who the owner of this wooden house was, he was sure of one thing, that is, the owner of this wooden house was not short of money. The appearance of the wooden house was very ordinary, similar to the wilderness construction videos he had seen before crossing. But the decoration inside the wooden house was very good. In other words, this was a holiday home located in the forest. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, etc. were all available. In the past 3 months, he had lived in a similar wooden house. It has to be said that the middle class in the United States knows how to enjoy life. There are similar wooden houses in the forests near many cities. It is precisely because of the existence of these wooden houses that he has lived quite comfortably in the past 3 months. After being busy in the kitchen for a while, Richard came to the dining table with the freshly prepared lunch and sat down. Then, he opened the laptop on the dining table and picked a good drama for himself. Although he has been in this world for more than 3 months, he still retains many habits before crossing. For example, when a person eats, he likes to watch while eating. A drama that suits your taste will make the food in front of you taste better. Of course, this is purely psychological. No matter how good a drama is, it can't change the original taste of food. However, Richard doesn't intend to change this habit. He eats while watching drama. Before he knew it, he had finished his lunch today. After lunch, he didn't immediately tidy up the knife, fork and dishes in front of him, but put them aside and started browsing the latest news online. Especially the news about himself, although it is impossible to search online what kind of mutant agent the Mutant Affairs Department will send to arrest him next. It can also let him, who lives in seclusion, know what has happened in the outside world recently. After entering his name as a keyword for search, he soon saw a lot of reports about himself. The passage of time has reduced his popularity on the internet, but the influence he brought has not only not decreased, but has become greater and greater. Soon, a top-ranked report attracted his attention. New leader of mutants. Richard Wesley's influence on the younger generation of mutants. After seeing this title, Richard frowned slightly, clicked on the title of the report, and began to browse the full content. Chapter 42 Protests. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It took him only a few minutes to read the report completely, and he smiled and shook his head. This is a report from a well-known TV station. The TV station invited several experts to discuss the impact of his existence and actions on the younger generation of mutants in a live broadcast during prime time last night. Not long after the show ended, the report appeared on the internet, summarizing the views of the experts in words. Then, he was labeled with the eye-catching new label New Leader of Mutants. From the perspective of communication, the TV station used the term New Leader of Mutants as the title, mainly to attract the attention and curiosity of others, thereby increasing the click rate of the report. Although the label New Leader of Mutants is a bit exaggerated, it is not a groundless title party. The experts who participated in the show all expressed similar views. Today's mutants are mainly divided into 2 factions. One faction is represented by Professor X and the X-Men, who advocate peaceful coexistence with the US government and ordinary people. The other faction is represented by Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants, who advocate the use of force to fight for fair rights. Although there are some fence-sitters between the Doves and the Hawks, and mutants who have no ideas or opinions, but in general, most mutants support either the Doves or the Hawks. And now, a new faction has emerged in the mutant community, that is the liberal faction represented by him, who neither accepts the Mutant Restriction Act and the management of the Department of Mutant Affairs, nor attacks other U.S. government agencies like the Brotherhood of Mutants, and advocates I will not offend others if others do not offend me. More importantly, most of the mutants who support him are young people among mutants. To put it simply, they are peers of the same age as him. Although he knew before that there was a liberal in the mutant community who imitated his style of doing things and advocated I will not offend others if others do not offend me, he never thought that he was the leader of the liberal faction. he never thought about becoming the new leader of mutants. Nor did he intend to use his own power to help the mutant community fight for anything. Mutants are indeed being treated unfairly now, but from a certain perspective, this is also the fault of most mutants who dare not resist. If these mutants unite and use force like Magneto to protect their legitimate rights and interests, neither the Mutant Restriction Act nor the Department of Mutant Affairs will appear. Fairness must be achieved with fists. If you don't dare to resist yourself, don't expect everyone to have a high moral level. Although Richard is also a mutant, he is a time traveler. He does not have a strong sense of belonging to the mutant community or to this world. For him, traveling to this world is like playing a real game that cannot be reloaded and has no system administrator, whether it is Wolverine and Sabretooth, or the mutant agents of the Department of Mutant Affairs, or other people who died in his hands. They all give him the same feeling as NPCs in a game. It is precisely because of this that he did not feel any discomfort about killing people, even though he started killing people on the first day of his journey, although he knew that this world was not a game, and the people he killed were not NPCs composed of data, but living humans. But in a short period of time, it was difficult for him to change his mindset from playing games. In his opinion, he would have to stay in this world for at least several years before he would gradually change his mindset. After reading the report released by the TV station, he put his laptop into the system space, picked up the knife and fork and dishes and went to the kitchen to clean them. Then, he returned to the table, took out $1,000 from the system space, put the money on the table, and pressed it with a cup. This $1,000 was the accommodation fee he left for the owner of the cabin. It was already very rude to live in the cabin without the consent of the owner of the cabin. If he patted his butt and left without leaving anything after living there for a few days, it would be somewhat unreasonable. At least in his opinion, it was inappropriate to do so, when he was cooking just now. He found that there was not much food left in the system space, and he could only live for 1 or 2 days at most. Considering that he had lived here for 5 or 6 days, he planned to leave here today, go to downtown San Francisco to buy new living supplies, and then go to the next city. After leaving the accommodation fee for the past few days on the table, he returned to the kitchen and picked up the garbage bag containing kitchen waste. The next second, he decisively performed teleportation and disappeared out of thin air. Downtown San Francisco. It must be said that teleportation is much more useful than Flash. In just a moment, he came to the center of San Francisco from the wooden house dozens of kilometers away. Although he had never been to San Francisco before, it didn't matter to him who had teleportation. Unlike Flash, teleportation requires locking the location you want to transfer in advance in your mind. After locking the transfer location, whether you have been there before or have an impression of the transfer location in your mind will not affect the performance of teleportation. To put it simply, as long as it does not exceed the transmission range of telepathy, he can choose the transmission location at will. The rooftop of a building in the city center. Richard stood on the edge of the rooftop and observed the surrounding situation, and began to look for the nearest large supermarket. Without much effort, he saw a branch of a large chain supermarket. After discovering this supermarket, he did not immediately perform telepathy to go there, but first teleported to a nearby alley and threw the garbage bag in his hand into the trash can. Then, he performed telepathy to come to the inside of the supermarket. Telepathy. After transmitting to the supermarket, he immediately performed telepathy and fixed everyone in the supermarket. The supermarket, which was originally noisy and bustling with people, suddenly became much quieter. In addition to the music played in the supermarket, the TV playing in the home appliance area, and the various equipment in operation that were still making sounds, the entire supermarket fell into a strange silence. Whether it was customers who came to the supermarket to purchase, the staff at the cash register, or the security personnel in the monitoring room, at this time, they all kept their previous movements motionless like the exquisite wax figures. After using telepathy to freeze everyone in the supermarket, Richard began his own shopping slowly. This was not the first time he had done this. He was not worried that the Mutant Affairs Department would find him, because after the purchase, he would leave San Francisco for the next city. Even if the Mutant Affairs Department knew that he had appeared in this supermarket, it would not be possible to lock his whereabouts. Time passed by little. After using teleportation to purchase the daily necessities he needed in different areas of the supermarket, he pushed the shopping cart to a cashier counter. Although $0 shopping is very popular in the United States now, he does not intend to do $0 shopping like those silent ones. Do not do good things for Small things, and do not do evil things for small things. Taking the barcode scanner from the staff, he began to scan the code to check out. Every time he personally scanned the code to check out, he could not help but complain in his heart. Supermarkets in the United States are now fully capable of setting up self-service code scanning checkout areas, but whether it is large chain supermarkets in the United States or those small supermarkets, they are still using primitive manual code scanning checkout. After scanning all the items in the shopping cart and taking them out of the warehouse, he took out the corresponding cash from the system space and put the cash and receipts together on the cash register in front of the cashier, then, throw the purchased daily necessities into the system space, mind transmission. After purchasing daily necessities, Richard disappeared instantly. The next second, the people who were fixed by telepathy returned to their original state. What is this? After looking at the extra cash and receipts on the cash register, the cashier wearing a supermarket uniform and a hat showed a puzzled expression. The roof of the building near the supermarket. Richard sat on the edge of the roof and took out a bag of potato chips and a bottle of frozen Fat House Happy Water from the system space. Which city should I go to next? While putting potato chips into his mouth, he was thinking about which city he would go to next. Although 3 months have passed, he is still in California, but he is not staying near Los Angeles. How about going to Las Vegas? Las Vegas is in Nevada, next to California, not far from San Francisco. If you use teleportation, you only need to use it once. When he was bored before, he deliberately tested the maximum transmission distance of teleportation, 200 kilometers. This is the current maximum distance of his teleportation. If he remembers correctly, San Francisco is only about 900 kilometers away from Las Vegas. This means that he only needs to perform teleportation 5 times at most to reach Las Vegas smoothly. Of course, the premise is that he does not get the wrong direction and get lost. Just when he was thinking about whether to go to Las Vegas and experience the local customs in Las Vegas, which is known as the world entertainment capital and gambling city, he heard the sound of sirens from a distance. No matter which city in the United States, the police cars whizzing past with sirens are a beautiful landscape. Richard did not take these sirens to heart, but when he saw the police cars whizzing through the streets and surrounding a group of mutants protesting at the intersection, he suddenly became interested. Although he didn't know the mutants who were protesting, the signs and banners held by these mutants attracted his attention. Freedom is not a crime. Oppose the Mutant Restriction Act. Mutants should have the freedom to use their superpowers legally. Oppose the Department of Mutant Affairs' excessive use of power. Richard Wesley should not be wanted. Chapter 43 Black Widow and Hulk. Please read on. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After seeing the content on the signs and banners, Richard knew that these mutants were all so-called liberal members, that is, those mutants who regarded him as the leader of the faction. Not only that, among these young mutants, there were also his fanatical fans. The reason why he knew this was not because he used telepathy to read the memories of these people, but because he saw 7 or 8 mutants with long silver hair among the protesting young mutants. Long silver hair is a typical sign of his fanatical fans. If they have long hair, these fanatical fans will dye their hair silver. If they don't have long hair, they will wear a silver wig. As far as he knows, even if they are not his fanatical fans, or even mutants, there are many young men and women who dye their hair silver. As for why these young men and women who are not even mutants do this, the reason is simple, because they are handsome. To put it bluntly, he has set off a trend of silver hair in the United States today with his own efforts. Richard has no interest in the so-called faction leaders, but after seeing this group of young mutants protesting on a busy crossroads, and there were 7 or 8 of his fanatical fans among them, he still became quite interested. Because of the existence of the Mutant Restriction Act and the Department of Mutant Affairs, many mutants will not reveal their mutant identities in public. Even legal mutants who have registered with the Department of Mutant Affairs, once you reveal that you are a mutant, even if you have registered with the Department of Mutant Affairs, you will still be discriminated against from all sides. Those who discriminate against mutants don't care whether you have registered or not. The San Francisco police who got off the police car started to drive away these young mutants without saying a word. Without any surprise, the San Francisco police's drive-away quickly turned into arrests. When the San Francisco police began to use weapons, the protesting young mutants did not hesitate at all, and they all used their superpowers to fight with the San Francisco police. Bang 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 bang, boom 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 boom, the sound of gunfire, collision, hitting, and explosions continued, and the busy crossroads immediately became a mess. Although they had no guns, relying on their own superpowers. These protesting young mutants quickly repelled the San Francisco police. Of course, many mutants were injured by bullets and began to retreat with the help of their companions. If no other organizations and forces intervened, the young mutants who had repelled the San Francisco police could have retreated smoothly before the arrival of other police, but unfortunately, their luck was not very good. Before they retreated, the people from the Mutant Affairs Department arrived at the scene. Whether it is big cities such as New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or those cities that are not so famous, there will be branches of the Mutant Affairs Department. The only difference is the number and strength of the branches. When the mutant agents of the Mutant Affairs Department arrived at the scene with fully armed special forces, the young mutants who tried to retreat were quickly stopped. If it was these young mutants who used their superpowers to bully the San Francisco police just now, it is the turn of the mutant agents to bully them with their superpowers. Although there were only 4 mutant agents who came, their number was far less than that of the protesting mutants, but the mutant agents were much stronger than the protesting mutants. The difference in strength between them was about the same as that between an NBA team and a middle school basketball team. Without any surprise, in front of these 4 mutant agents, the protesting young mutants were caught one after another and put on the superpower suppression collar that looked like a dog collar. As their superpowers were suppressed, the protesting young mutants immediately lost the power to resist. On the rooftop of the building, Richard, who was sitting on the edge of the roof, looked at the young mutants who were escorted to the car and poured the last few chips in the bag into his mouth. Then, he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers lightly. Thunder. Rumble. Thunders suddenly sounded one after another in the clear sky. The next second, 4 arm-thick and more than a dozen finger-thick silver-white lightning bolts fell from the sky and struck the 4 mutant agents and Special Forces members head-on. After hearing the sudden thunder in the sky, the 4 mutant agents realized that something was wrong, but this does not mean that they can avoid the thunder and lightning cast by Richard. Compared with 3 months ago, Richard's mastery of thunder and lightning has reached the point of perfection. Whether it is the power of lightning, the speed of release, or the control of lightning, he is far better than 3 months ago. In just a moment, the silver-white lightning as thick as an arm hit the 4 mutant agents. As for the lightning as thick as a finger, it hit the fully armed Special Forces. They were all struck by lightning, and they all felt the intense pain of the strong current flowing through their bodies, and their bodies fell to the ground uncontrollably. This, after seeing the mutant agents and Special Forces being knocked to the ground by the sudden lightning, whether it was the young mutant wearing a superpower suppression collar, or the surrounding San Francisco police and onlookers, all showed unexpected expressions. Although they didn't know who launched the attack, they were sure of one thing, that is, the person who summoned lightning to attack mutant agents and Special Forces was definitely not an ordinary mutant. There are many mutants who can summon lightning or release electricity, but there are not many mutants who can attack so accurately and knock down mutant agents and Special Forces in an instant. Just as they were thinking about who secretly helped the protesting young mutants, a man with silver hair, imposing manner, and handsome appearance appeared in their sight out of thin air. Richard. The person they saw was none other than Richard, who was sitting on the roof watching the show just now. After teleporting from the roof of the building next to him to the street, Richard said to the protesting young mutants, "If you don't want to wear a collar like a dog, you'd better practice your superpowers more. Your superpower skills are as unfamiliar as a child who has just learned to walk." As soon as the voice fell, the superpower suppression collars on the necks of these young mutants were torn by sharp wind blades that were imperceptible to the naked eye, and fell to the ground under the action of gravity. Strong wind. Wind blade. Richard didn't have the idea of summoning the authentic knife to help them unlock the superpower suppression collars, so he chose to use strong winds to create dagger-sized wind blades. Although these dagger-sized wind blades did not have particularly amazing attack power, they were more than enough to tear the superpower suppression collars. After hearing Richard's words, a man who looked to be in his early 20s with short blonde hair said excitedly, "Finally, I see you in person. Do you live nearby? Or did you come here to save us? Can we learn from you?" After the first one, the other young mutants around immediately surrounded him, just like fanatical fans seeing their idols, and surrounded Richard. At the same time, they asked him excitedly like the blonde man, and some even stretched out their restless salty hands to try to touch his body and stroke his flowing silver hair. Although they had no ill intentions, Richard would not let them touch him easily. Boys must learn to protect themselves outside. Bounce. Without any hesitation, he immediately performed bounce, creating a 360-degree air shock wave with no dead angles, pushing these young mutants back several meters. He did not create a powerful air shock wave, but just pushed them away without hurting them. I don't have any ideas to teach you, and I'm not here to save you. I'm just unhappy with the Mutant Affairs Department. Richard glanced at the young mutants and said calmly. After that, he was ready to use his superpowers to plunder the 4 mutant agents. However, at this moment, he saw 2 familiar figures among the crowd of spectators around him. How could they be here? After seeing these 2 familiar figures, he frowned slightly. Black Widow Natasha Romanoff. Hulk Bruce Banner. P.S. Whether it can be on the list of the week's strong recommendations next week depends on today's follow-up reading. Please read, collect, and recommend. Please everyone. Chapter 44 Hulk's Competitiveness, please read on. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This was the first time Richard saw Black Widow Natasha and Hulk Banner in person. He had only read about them online before. To be precise, he had read reports about them in the Avengers Online, although this universe is not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there has never been a Battle of New York in which Loki led the Chitauri to invade New York, but Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Hulk, and Hawkeye still formed the Avengers under the influence of fate. Not only that, the connection between the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. is quite close, and it feels like a team under S.H.I.E.L.D. While Richard was looking at Natasha and Banner, they were also looking at him. At this time, Natasha and Banner were both wearing daily clothes, and they looked like the spectators next to them, and there was nothing particularly eye-catching. If there is any difference, it is that Natasha's figure and face are much better than the women around her. Even though she was wearing loose clothes and not the combat uniform that could fully show her graceful curves like a tights, she still stood out from the crowd. As for Banner, he blended in well with the crowd. In addition to his scholarly temperament that could not be concealed, he looked like a passerby. Of course, if he turned into the Hulk, that would be another matter. After taking a look at Natasha and Banner, and using telepathy to sense them briefly, Richard retracted his gaze. Although he could now easily read the memories of Natasha and Banner, he did not do so, but only used telepathy to confirm whether they were hostile. If they were hostile, he would take the next step. Otherwise, he would not read their memories like a perverted peeping Tom. After retracting his gaze, Richard did not waste any more time and decisively performed Plunder. Gain new abilities: super strength, super physique, force field creation, flame release, energy materialization. Gain the same type of abilities: ability fusion. Super strength and super physique are enhanced. Release flames to enhance the skill. Big flame, do you want to enhance it? Without any hesitation, Richard immediately chose, yes, skill Big Flame is enhanced. X-Gene Superpower Content Update. Beta level, energy emission, energy absorption, invisibility, supervision, telepathy, giant body, gravity binding, thermal vision, air bullet, flying, attack transfer, mind moving, force field creation, energy materialization. If it was 3 months ago, the superpower of releasing flames would most likely enhance Big Flame by 1 level. After all, Big Flame was only level 1 at that time. Now, the X-Gene superpower of releasing flames can only enhance Big Flame to a certain extent, and there is no way to directly upgrade Big Flame by 1 level. It only takes 100 points of proficiency to upgrade a level 1 skill to level 2, and it takes 3,000 points of proficiency to upgrade a level 3 skill to level 4. If you want to quickly upgrade your skills by relying on the X-Gene superpower of plundering, unless he can plunder alpha-level superpowers. Obviously, the 4 mutant agents killed by him with the Thunderbolt were not alpha-level mutants. Among the mutants, alpha-level mutants account for only a few percent, beta-level mutants are more, accounting for about 1/10. More than half of the mutants are only delta-level mutants. According to the evaluation system given by the U.S. government, the number of level 2 mutants accounts for more than half of the entire mutant population. Turning off the information panel that only he could see, Richard was about to use telepathy to leave when he found that Banner's eyes looking at him were a little Hostile. After discovering this, he did not hesitate and used telepathy again to simply read Banner's current thoughts. Want to help the Mutant Affairs Department capture me? Although Banner can transform into the Hulk, who has infinite strength and amazing defense, his magic resistance is not very high. Whether it is the influence of psychic ability or the illusion on the spiritual level, it is easy for him to transform into a rampaging Hulk. In the movie universe, Scarlet Witch Wanda has proved it with actual actions. After reading Banner's idea of helping the Department of Mutant Affairs to capture him in his mind, Richard began to read his memory more deeply. Soon, he knew why Banner suddenly had this idea. The reason is very simple, because the words of Black Widow Natasha aroused his competitive spirit as a man. While Richard was browsing the information panel, Banner asked Natasha if she wanted to help the Department of Mutant Affairs. Although they are responsible for different fields, the Department of Mutant Affairs and S.H.I.E.L.D. are both official agencies and can be regarded as allies on the same front. Banner has 7 doctoral degrees, but it is obvious that he is not very clear about the unspoken rules between official agencies. Before receiving the official request for assistance from the Department of Mutant Affairs, rashly capturing their wanted targets will not only not get their thanks, but also make them think that S.H.I.E.L.D. does not respect them. Natasha and Banner appeared in San Francisco not because they received a request for assistance from the Department of Mutant Affairs, but to capture the wanted targets of S.H.I.E.L.D. Although Richard killed the mutant agents and special forces of the Department of Mutant Affairs in front of them, Natasha did not think they had to stop Richard, so she rejected Banner's proposal. This would have been fine, but I don't know if it was because she was with Banner that she was a little too relaxed. She said something that could easily make Banner, or Hulk, feel a strong desire to win. I don't want to see you get hurt. For Banner, this sentence is normal, but for Hulk, it's different. Today's Banner can indeed control whether he transforms to a certain extent, but if Hulk insists on coming out, it is difficult for him to stop Hulk. Similarly, if Hulk doesn't want to come out, it is difficult for him to let Hulk come out. Natasha's unintentional words made Hulk, who thinks like a child, feel strongly dissatisfied. Will I get hurt? How could I get hurt? I'm Hulk. Although Richard was reading Banner's memory, he could also read Hulk's thoughts. Not only that, he could also clearly feel Hulk's strong reluctance to accept. When Richard looked at him again, Banner also noticed something was wrong. Before he could think about it, his skin turned a strange green, and the veins on his forehead and neck began to bulge. Natasha was the first to notice Banner's abnormality. Just as she was about to appease Banner, Banner roared like a beast, scaring the surrounding crowd and young mutants. Roar. Under the gaze of everyone, Banner's body began to expand visibly. The coat and shirt on his upper body were directly torn by his increasingly large body, and turned into rags and fell to the ground. The jeans on his lower body could not withstand his rapidly thickening legs, and changed from long pants to shorts like tight pants. The Hulk. After seeing Banner transform, the crowd and young mutants around him found that this gentle uncle was actually the Hulk in the Avengers. If Natasha standing next to Banner before his transformation was the one who stood out from the crowd and attracted people's attention, now, Natasha, with her beautiful face and hot body, has become the foil for Banner, or more accurately, the foil for the Hulk. After seeing Banner begin to transform into the Hulk, Richard summoned the authentic knife from the system space. Then, he slightly mobilized his spiritual power and said to the people around him, "Those who don't want to die, get out." Although his voice was not loud, with the blessing of spiritual power, his words were not only clearly heard by everyone around him, but also brought a strong sense of oppression that ordinary people could not resist. After hearing his words, whether it was the ordinary crowd or the young mutants like his fans, they all fled as fast as they could. Soon, only Richard and the other two were left on the busy street that had originally gathered many people. Natasha did not leave, but looked at Hulk with a surprised look. At this time, she did not realize that her unintentional words just now would make Hulk so competitive. Although he knew that Hulk just wanted to prove to Natasha that he was the strongest and did not really want to be his enemy, Richard still showed an expectant expression on his face. In the current Avengers, there are only 2 opponents that can interest him. One is Thor, the other is the Hulk in front of him. Iron Man Tony and Captain America Rogers are no less famous than them, but he is not very interested in Tony and Rogers. When Banner completely transformed into Hulk, Richard said to Natasha, who had not left yet, "If only half of San Francisco is left, will S.H.I.E.L.D. compensate?" Chapter 45 Richard vs. Hulk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What? After hearing Richard's words, even the experienced Natasha was stunned for a moment. She would never have thought that Richard would ask her such a question at a time when a war was about to break out. Although she didn't quite understand Richard's thoughts, she immediately started to explain. We are not here to arrest you, we just happened to pass by. Natasha was telling the truth, but she didn't know why Hulk forced himself out, and she didn't realize that her words were adding fuel to the fire, making Hulk, who wanted to prove it to her, even more unconvinced. I know you are not here to arrest me, but the big guy next to you is now full of fighting spirit, and he looks like he will never give up until he wins against me. Richard raised his left hand and pointed at Hulk with his authentic knife. After seeing him pointing at him with the authentic knife, Hulk raised his right leg and stepped hard on the ground, stepping out an obvious hole on the street, with the hole as the center. The cracks spread rapidly around like a spider web. At the same time, Hulk opened his hands and roared like a wild beast again, like a gorilla. Richard didn't care about Hulk's actions and said to Natasha, if you don't want to see me and this big guy destroy the whole San Francisco, I suggest you stay away from him. If you get hurt or die by accident, he will go completely crazy. After that, he held the more than 2-meter-long authentic sword and danced a knife flower casually. Then, he raised the authentic sword to the same height as his sight, with the blade facing up, his left hand in front and his right hand behind, posing a two-handed sword-holding posture that he rarely does. Although Sephiroth's dominant hand is his left hand, only when he holds the sword with both hands does it mean that he is really serious. If he only uses one hand, it means that he has not yet shown his full strength. Richard is the same. In the past battles, he has always held the sword with one hand. This is the first time he has held the sword with both hands. Hulk doesn't know the sword method, but after seeing Richard's posture, he, who was just like a beast, immediately became calm and a serious expression appeared on his face, with huge green eyes staring at Richard. Seeing the Hulk who suddenly calmed down and Richard who took a fighting posture, Natasha knew that she could no longer stop the fight between the two of them. She didn't say anything else, and just like the spectators and young mutants who had just left, she quickly left the intersection and came to the street more than 100 meters away. As she left, she took out her mobile phone from her arms and started to contact people from the San Francisco branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. She didn't want the agents of the San Francisco branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. to come and stop Richard and Hulk, but to let them come to maintain order and deal with the subsequent aftermath. When Natasha left, Richard and Hulk attacked at the same time in perfect tacit understanding. I saw their legs suddenly exert force at the same time and shot towards each other. In just a blink of an eye, they came to a distance suitable for close combat. Hulk raised his fist, which was bigger than an ordinary person's head, and attacked Richard's chest fiercely. Richard swung the authentic knife in his hand and chopped at Hulk's fist. Boom! Hulk's thunderous right fist and Richard's authentic knife collided fiercely, and a huge noise broke out. At the same time, a shock wave visible to the naked eye started from the collision surface. The shock wave swept around at an astonishing speed, shattering all the glass of the surrounding shops and cars. It's worthy of being the Hulk. The physical strength is high. Richard first sighed in his heart, then lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his right foot, and the whole person retreated more than 10 meters as if he was not affected by gravity. Although he chose to retreat, Hulk did not chase him, but looked at his right fist with some surprise. There was a not very deep but obvious knife wound on the middle finger bone of his right fist. Richard did not use skills such as 8 blades flash and earth shaking, but only used magic to slightly enhance the sharpness and firmness of the authentic sword. But even so, the authentic sword still cut Hulk's skin. However, it did not penetrate into Hulk's right fist, but was blocked by the phalanx of Hulk's right middle finger. Hulk knew that his body could not block any attack, but he did not expect that he would be injured by a long sword that seemed to be broken with just a little force. Although the wound was not very serious, it was enough to surprise him. While Hulk was looking at his right fist, Richard was also evaluating Hulk's strength. Judging from the fight just now, Hulk's strength is still much stronger than his, but fortunately, Hulk's strength is not as exaggerated as in the comics. Otherwise, even if he used some force-relieving techniques just now, he would not be able to fight against Hulk on the surface. Compared with ordinary people, alpha-level super strength is indeed amazing. But compared to the typical power hero Hulk in the Marvel Universe, the alpha-level Superpower is not very strong. When Hulk's eyes were withdrawn from his right fist, Richard did not hesitate and attacked again. He came to Hulk in an instant as if flying, and swung the authentic knife again. However, this time he did not choose to fight Hulk head-on, but let the authentic knife slash towards Hulk's neck. In terms of strength, he is not as good as Hulk, but in terms of comprehensive combat power, Hulk is not his opponent. Although he does not have such superb fighting skills as Richard, Hulk's reaction is not slow. Before the authentic knife hits him, Hulk raised his right hand to slap the attacking authentic knife. At the same time, his left fist struck Richard's head with lightning. Richard certainly would not use his head to test how strong Hulk's punch is. Telepathy. He was originally standing in front of Hulk and instantly came behind Hulk. Swish. Before Hulk could react, the authentic knife swept across his back, leaving a scar across his entire back. Green blood, unusual for ordinary people, gushed out from the wound and flowed down Hulk's back. Although he didn't find Richard's trace just now, Hulk knew Richard appeared behind him after feeling the pain in his back. He ignored the pain in his back and kicked his legs hard, rushing towards Richard like a heavy truck running at full speed. If they were agents of the Mutant Affairs Department, they would definitely not adopt such tactics even if they knew Richard was behind them. Compared with hitting Richard with their backs, they would be more inclined to immediately distance themselves or turn around and counterattack. But Hulk is not an agent of the Mutant Affairs Department. For Hulk, it doesn't matter what kind of attack method he uses in battle, what matters is whether he wants to do it. As long as he wants, let alone hitting someone with his back, even if he grabs the opponent's feet and swings him around on the ground like a rope, it's no problem. From a certain perspective, Hulk's fighting style is somewhat similar to that of saber-toothed tiger, both of which follow the body's instincts. Facing Hulk's counterattack, Richard did not use flash to leave, but raised his right hand. Bounce. Bang! A huge crash like an explosion suddenly sounded. Under the gaze of everyone, Hulk, who tried to hit Richard with his back, was bounced out like a golf ball, drawing a standard parabola in the air. Chapter 46. The Hulk Feels Wronged. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Under the gaze of Natasha and the surrounding crowd, Hulk flew high into the sky and flew quickly towards the other end of the street. Boom. Although Richard did not attack with all his strength, Hulk still flew dozens of meters before falling heavily to the street, creating an impact crater visible to the naked eye on the ground. The impact crater was not particularly deep, and the force of the impact was nothing to the thick-skinned Hulk, but compared to the damage to his body, the damage to Hulk's mind was much greater. To put it simply, from birth to now, he has never suffered this kind of injustice. You know, he usually knocks other people away, but now, he was actually knocked away. More importantly, he was shot away in front of Natasha. Compared with Banner, Hulk never hides his love for Natasha. Otherwise, Natasha would not be the only person in the Avengers who could make him obediently return control of his body to Banner. Although the current Hulk doesn't understand what it means to have sex between a man and a woman, one thing he is sure of is that he doesn't want to be looked down upon by Natasha. If Hulk had only been aroused by Natasha's unintentional words before, he had a strong desire to compete. So now, he is really angry, in other words, angry. For Hulk, anger is like the adrenaline of ordinary people, which can greatly improve his unreasonable strength and physique. Hulk, who was not much injured, immediately got up, turned his head to look at Richard, and roared like an ancient ferocious beast. Then, it ran towards Richard like a crazy rhinoceros. Dong 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 dong. Hulk's footsteps were as dull as the sound of war drums. Although dull, it also revealed an amazing sense of power. Every step Hulk takes can leave pothole-like footprints on the smooth and hard streets. In just a blink of an eye, Hulk rushed to Richard, raised his right fist and struck hard at his head. Facing Hulk's attack, Richard did not use teleportation to dodge, but instead swung the authentic sword in his hand. Move the ground. For consecutive slashes as fast as lightning appeared instantly, and the sharp blade of the authentic sword kept scratching Hulk's body. Chi 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 bang. Unlike Richard's previous moves, Dongchi's last knife slashed across Hulk's body and sent Hulk flying away. Tsukichi's last sword has always had the effect of killing the enemy, it's just that Richard rarely used it before, or in other words, he didn't have much chance to use the flying effect of Dongchi's last sword, not to mention ordinary mutant agents and special forces members. The three swords in front of Dongchi are enough to kill them. Benjamin, the operations director of the Los Angeles branch, had the opportunity to experience the knockback effect of the final strike, but it's a pity that Richard's movement at that time was only level 2, and he was not yet at the stage where he could adjust the power at will, and now, he finally had the opportunity to use the final slashing effect of Dong-Chi. Under the gaze of everyone, Hulk was knocked away again, flew dozens of meters upside down, and fell heavily to the street. Neither Natasha, who knows the Hulk better, nor the melon eaters like Richard, who have only seen Hulk reports online, never imagined that the Hulk, who is much larger than Richard, would actually be able to do it in just a few seconds. Was knocked out twice in a row. Don't say they didn't expect it. Even Hulk himself didn't expect things to develop like this. In his opinion, as long as he used a little strength, he could crush Richard, who looked like a skinny monkey, to death, but the result is that until now, he can't even touch Richard. Not only that, Richard also left 5 or 6 scars on his body. Although he doesn't know Richard very well, Hulk knows that he dislikes Richard very much, especially, just like before, Hulk quickly stood up and ran towards Richard again. Then, with a bang, he was slashed out by Richard again. After realizing that he could not easily touch Richard, Hulk immediately changed his tactics. I saw him coming to the front of a car and lifting the car easily. Then, he used the car in his hand as a weapon and hit Richard hard. After seeing Hulk change his tactics and start throwing cars to attack him, Richard still did not use teleportation, but relied on his own flexibility to dodge the cars thrown by Hulk calmly. He would choose to avoid cars that he could avoid by just taking a step or half a step to the side, letting these cars fly past him within a few centimeters of him. If it's a car that requires several steps to avoid, he will cut it in half with his Masamune sword and let the bisected car fly past him. Bang 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 bang. One after another, cars were thrown out by Hulk as if they were free of charge. Although he tried his best to aim at Richard, the car he threw was never able to touch Richard. Not only that, after seeing Richard dodge his attack calmly, he was already angry and even more angry. It didn't take long for the Hulk to throw away all the nearby cars. These cars that had suffered unreasonable disasters were scattered all over the street behind Richard like garbage, although Hulk's long-range attack failed to harm Richard. His move caused a lot of trouble to the people around him. When Hulk threw the first car, the people behind Richard realized that Hulk didn't care about their existence at all. They thought they were far enough away that they could stay at the scene and eat melon unharmed. However, it turns out that staying at the scene of a superhuman battle to eat melon at close range is a very risky thing, even if they are not Hulk's target. Flying glass fragments and car wreckage are also fatal dangers to them. When several unlucky people were hit by glass fragments and car wreckage, these people who were taking pictures of Richard and Hulk with their mobile phones realized that they were just people who were watching, not frontline reporters who had to risk their lives to grab headlines. No one needed to remind them. After seeing the injured unfortunates, these melon eaters ran as fast as they were fleeing. Neither Richard nor Hulk paid attention to these melon eaters. After Hulk threw away all the cars around him, Richard raised his authentic knife and said to Hulk, "Your ranged attack is over, now it's my turn." After speaking, he raised his right hand, palm facing up, and mobilized the magic power in his body, black magic crystal. As the magic power was consumed, a black energy ball with a diameter of 20 to 30 centimeters and a pitch-black body, like a black hole, appeared on the palm of Richard's right hand. For those who have not played the Final Fantasy VII game, it is difficult to tell what kind of skill the black materia is from just looking at the name. The so-called black magic crystal is actually a meteorite formed by summoning magic power to fall from the sky and attack the enemy. In the game, the power of black magic crystal is fixed, but the power of the black magic crystal in Richard's hands is purely determined by the magic power consumed. To put it simply, the more magic power is consumed, the larger the meteorite summoned and the more powerful it will naturally be. In addition, he can also decide the height at which the meteorite falls. If it is in the game, the meteorite will only fall from a place 10 or 20 meters above the target's head, but here, Richard can freely choose whether the meteorite falls tens of centimeters away from the target or falls from an altitude of thousands of meters. The higher the height, the stronger the impact. But again, the higher the height, the lower the probability of hitting the target, unless the target has never noticed the meteorite falling from the sky and stays in place stupidly. Chapter 47 What should you do with the third one? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hulk didn't know what skills Richard was using now, however, after seeing the dark energy ball floating above the palm of Richard's right hand, he immediately felt a strong sense of crisis. Hulk is indeed not an intellectual hero, but he is not stupid, to be precise. Not only is he not stupid, he is also very witty sometimes, just like what the saying goes, big guys also have great wisdom. Just when Hulk was about to leave his current position, he suddenly found that he was enveloped by a beam of green light falling from the sky. This beam of green light falling from the sky is nothing but a sign that the meteorite has locked onto the Hulk. Not knowing what happened, Hulk instinctively looked up at the sky. Then, he saw a meteorite several times larger than himself heading towards him at great speed. If Hulk ignores the green light that envelopes him, he still has a chance to leave before the meteorite falls, but unfortunately, he missed this opportunity. Boom. The huge meteorite carried amazing power and hit Hulk heavily. The huge sound caused by the impact immediately spread to dozens of surrounding streets, and the terrifying shock wave swept away in all directions with Hulk as the center. All the window glass on both sides of the street exploded with a bang, and the surrounding buildings and the ground shook violently, as if an earthquake was coming. Seeing this scene, the people who had just evacuated because Hulk threw the car were all thankful that they had evacuated to a farther distance. How many superpowers has he mastered? Is this really an ability produced by genetic mutation? How strong is he? Whether it was Natasha, the San Francisco police who arrived, or the crowd, they all had expressions of disbelief on their faces when they saw Richard summoning a meteorite out of thin air to hit the Hulk. Although mutant superpowers are inherently strange, they still can't believe what they see in front of them. The air waves generated by the impact gradually disappeared, and the flying dust also began to dissipate. When everything returned to calm, Hulk soon appeared in Natasha's sight. Hulk stood up from the impact crater and looked at Richard with anger on his face. Just when he was about to do something, the green light pillar enveloped him again. Black magic crystal. After seeing the angry expression on Hulk's face, Richard used the black magic crystal again and summoned a huge meteorite. Not only that, he also made the meteorite appear less than half a meter above Hulk's head. Boom. Before Hulk could do anything, he was hit by a meteorite again. However, unlike before, Hulk was not knocked down, but raised his hands to resist the meteorite. Because the distance was too close, the impact of this meteorite was far less powerful than the one just now, although Richard can also consume more magic power to make the meteorite gain terrifying acceleration at a distance of just half a meter. But he didn't intend to do that, because instead of consuming magic power to speed up this meteorite, it is better to summon another one. Relying on the amazing power of cheating, Hulk resisted the meteorite and gave Richard a look of disdain. After seeing Hulk's disdainful look, Richard smiled and said, "What should you do with the third one?" The third one. Richard's voice not only reached the ears of Hulk, but also reached the ears of Natasha and the melon-eating crowd. If they were speaking normally, it would be absolutely impossible for Natasha and the others, hundreds of meters away, to hear Richard's voice. Unless they all have super hearing, they could hear it now purely because Richard wanted them to hear it and deliberately used magic power to spread his voice. Hulk was carrying the meteorite and couldn't see the situation above his head, but Natasha and the others could clearly see a huge meteorite that was more than 10 or 20 meters in diameter heading towards Hulk as it was traveling through the atmosphere at extremely fast speeds, surrounded by high-temperature flames. As Natasha and the others watched, the meteorite hit the meteorite carried by Hulk hard. Boom. The terrifying shock wave generated by the impact swept away in all directions like a hurricane. The ground was shaken again, and the flying dust raised by the shock wave enveloped the entire block. Even Natasha and others who were hundreds of meters away were also thrown away one by the shock wave. If given a chance to come back, they would definitely retreat a kilometer or two away, but unfortunately, there is no regret medicine in the world. Like Natasha and the others, Hulk now regrets it. At this time, he spread his hands and lay on his back in the center of the impact crater, which was more than 1 meter deep. He felt as aggrieved as a child weighing 1 ton. Strictly speaking, it's not like he really is a 1-ton kid. Although the one lying in the impact crater did not get up, Hulk's current injuries were not serious. Compared with the physical harm, the psychological harm he suffered was much more serious. In addition, he now finally understood why Natasha said she didn't want to see him get hurt. Natasha did not look down on him, but genuinely cared about him. After seeing Hulk lying in the impact crater unwilling to get up, Richard used teleportation to reach the edge of the impact crater. Get up, I won't hit you with meteorites again, nor will I chop you with this knife. Richard said to Hulk. After hearing his words, Hulk sat up like an angry child. Then, he said in a muffled voice. Hulk doesn't like meteorites, and Hulk doesn't like your knife either. After saying that, Hulk raised his right hand and pointed at the authentic knife in Richard's hand. It's really a child. Richard smiled and shook his head, and put the authentic knife back into the system space. Then, he turned his right wrist, phantom sword. Under Hulk's gaze, he summoned a phantom sword that was more than 1 meter long and emitted a blue light. It looked more like a work of art than a weapon. Next, I will use the phantom sword to spar with you. By the way, do you know the difference between sparring and fighting? Richard asked. Hulk didn't speak, but nodded to show that he knew. Since you know, then get up and continue sparring. Richard continued. Hulk wants to spar. Hulk is very strong. Hulk will not be knocked down. After saying that, Hulk stood up and patted the dust off his body. Although Natasha and the others couldn't hear what Richard and Hulk said, they knew that the fight between Richard and Hulk was not over when they saw Hulk stand up and come out of the impact crater. Not only that, they also found that Hulk was no longer angry, and followed Richard out of the impact crater like an obedient child. What happened to Hulk? After seeing the changes in Hulk, Natasha frowned in confusion. Although Hulk was not completely unable to communicate, it was very difficult to communicate with Hulk. Even she could only communicate with Hulk reluctantly now. Under the gaze of Natasha and the crowd, Richard and Hulk stood more than 20 meters apart. Then, they attacked each other at the same time. Hulk used his best melee attack, and his huge fists kept attacking Richard, and Richard also used the phantom sword to display his perfect swordsmanship, treating Hulk as a rare sparring partner. Stab, point, collapse, stir, press, chop, intercept, lift, cut, pick, wipe, cut, pierce. Although he did not use any fancy sword moves, but only performed basic sword attacks, these basic attacks were performed by Richard holding the phantom sword, and they still had a kind of graceful and elegant style. As for Hulk, his fighting style was the same as that of the saber-toothed tiger, relying on instinct to fight. Time passed by little, unknowingly. Richard and Hulk fought back and forth for several minutes. Richard's previous battles ended very quickly, and it felt like playing a game of mowing the grass with a musu. Although his fight with Hulk now was not a battle, but a competition, it still made him experience a refreshing feeling that he had never experienced before. Hulk had amazing strength and good defense. Using him as a sparring partner, there was no need to worry about accidentally killing him. Hulk felt the same way now. In the past, he sneered at the so-called skills, but now he opened his eyes wide to learn. Now he has realized that only using brute force instinctively is not a qualified warrior. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Hulk will gradually realize this after arriving on Sakaar. Because of Richard, Hulk realized his lack of skills in advance and had the idea that he also needed to practice skills. Just when Richard and Hulk were playing happily, several missiles flew in the sky in the distance, flying towards them at high speed. Boom, 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 boom. These missiles hit their location accurately, and a huge explosion sounded immediately, and the orange-red explosion flames swept around. Along with the explosion, the sound of the Mutant Affairs Department fighter jets whizzing past was heard in the air. Soon, the flames produced by the explosion disappeared. When everything returned to calm, several huge explosion pits appeared where Richard and Hulk had originally stood. Where are the people? After discovering that Richard and Hulk had disappeared, Natasha and the crowd immediately looked for their traces. The next second, they heard thunder in the sky. Boom. Looking in the direction of the sound, Natasha and the crowd saw a huge lightning bolt falling from the sky. This silver-white thick lightning bolt did not strike the ground, but struck the black fighter plane whizzing through the sky. Boom. The speed of the black fighter plane was indeed very fast, but the speed of lightning was even faster. Under the gaze of Hulk and others, the black fighter plane of the Mutant Affairs Department exploded in the air like fireworks. The person who summoned lightning to attack the black fighter plane was none other than Richard. Before the missile hit him, he grabbed Hulk's shoulder, performed teleportation, and took Hulk, who had not yet reacted, away from the original position. Afterwards, he performed a big thunderbolt and summoned a thick lightning bolt that could destroy the black fighter plane with one strike. Chapter 48 Two-Sword Demon / You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 48 Two-Sword Style. Demon Slash. Before fighting Hulk, Richard knew that the San Francisco branch of the Mutant Affairs Department would definitely continue to send people over, even if the mutant agents in the San Francisco branch's operations department were not sure of taking him down. The San Francisco branch would not pretend to know nothing. After using the Thunderbolt to destroy the Black Fighter, Richard once again used teleportation to bring the bewildered Hulk back to the street. Looking at Hulk, who had not yet realized what had happened, he slowly said, "It seems that someone doesn't want us to continue playing. Let's just exchange one more move and end it." As soon as the voice fell, Richard's left hand also had a phantom sword that looked more like a work of art than a weapon. After seeing Richard summon another phantom sword, Hulk nodded seriously. Although he didn't know what move Richard would perform in the end, he wanted to see it. Under Hulk's gaze, Richard held the phantom sword and danced a sword flower casually. Then, he raised the phantom swords in both hands and made a two-sword flow posture similar to a cross. The phantom sword in the left hand was in front, and the phantom sword in the right hand was behind. Although he didn't know what Richard would do next, Hulk suddenly had a bad premonition after seeing Richard's two-sword flow posture. Hulk's premonition was very accurate, but unfortunately, his premonition came a little bit late. The next second, when he had a bad premonition in his heart, Richard came in front of him and swung the phantom swords in both hands at the same time. Two-sword flow, Demon Slash. Two-sword flow, Demon Slash is not a skill of the character template, but a move he created himself. Although it is a self-created move, the use of two-sword flow, Demon Slash still requires magic power. Otherwise, the phantom sword slashed out is just an ordinary slash, and will not get the extra blessing of magic power, and there will be no special effect. The two phantom swords swung by lightning hit Hulk's chest at the same time, although both were slashed from top to bottom. The left-hand phantom sword slashed from Hulk's right shoulder to his left waist, while the right-hand phantom sword slashed from his left shoulder to his right waist. Hulk saw Richard appear in front of him like a ghost, but he had no time to stop Richard, let alone stop him. He couldn't even raise his hands to block. Chi. As the phantom sword passed, a cross-shaped wound immediately appeared on Hulk's chest. If it was an ordinary person or a mutant without a super physique, Richard's two-sword flow, Demon Slash could kill the opponent without any suspense, but it was obvious that Hulk was not an easy target to kill. Like the ground shaking, the two-sword flow, Demon Slash also had the effect of slashing the enemy. When Hulk felt the severe pain in his chest, he flew backwards uncontrollably, and green blood splashed out from the cross wound on his chest. Bang! The Hulk flew backwards and directly crashed through the wall of the building behind him, and was slashed into the building. Although Hulk was chopped off, Richard was sure that this injury would not kill Hulk, or, he had no intention of killing Hulk. Although Hulk took the initiative to show hostility, he knew that Hulk did not want to capture him or kill him. Hulk did this just to prove to Natasha that he was better than him. To put it simply, Hulk was just too competitive and had no ill intentions. Hulk's mind was now similar to that of a child. As an adult, Richard certainly would not treat him like a child. Although he killed many people, he was not a perverted killer. He would not kill a child just because he was dissatisfied. In addition, he had a lot of fun fighting with Hulk this time, because he knew that Hulk had no ill intentions. Richard did not use his full strength at the beginning. Otherwise, he would use his full strength to perform the 8 swords flash in the first move of the fight. After slashing Hulk, Richard immediately released the phantom swords in both hands and teleported to the Hulk who was slashed. At this time, Hulk was lying in the back kitchen of a restaurant, surrounded by broken wall tiles and fallen dishes. "Let's stop here today. If we continue to fight, people will really die," Richard said to Hulk, who had not yet stood up. After hearing his words, Hulk immediately nodded and sat up. Just when Hulk wanted to say something, Richard continued. "You can tell Natasha that you and I tied. You can't touch me, and I can't kill you. After all, your body is too strong, and your strength and physique are better than mine." After saying that, he stretched out his right hand towards Hulk. Hulk did not hesitate at all, and immediately stretched out his right hand and shook hands with Richard. Although Hulk is not as smart as Banner, and his mental performance is similar to that of a child, he can still see whether others are hostile to him, or in other words, he can still sense it. "Okay, see you next time. I hope your fighting skills will be better next time we meet. Come on, big guy, I'm optimistic about you." After saying that, Richard patted Hulk's head and used teleportation to leave the restaurant's kitchen. When he completely disappeared, Hulk stood up and took a look at the wound on his chest that was no longer bleeding. Because of his extraordinary strength and physique, many people don't know that Hulk also has a regenerative ability far beyond that of ordinary people. Even if most of the important organs in his body are destroyed, he can still regenerate and recover. In addition, he is immune to all diseases, poisons, chemical weapons, and biological weapons. In the comics, his regenerative and survivability are so strong that he can survive even if his entire head is cut off and soaked in a bottle full of formalin. Not only that, as long as his head is reassembled with the rest of his body in the specimen jar, he can completely recover in a short time, as if he had never been injured, although the Hulk in this universe is not as strong as in the comics. His self-healing ability should not be underestimated. The scars left by Richard on his body will be completely recovered in a short time. After getting up, Hulk did not leave the restaurant kitchen immediately. After the cross wound on his chest was almost healed, he left the restaurant kitchen and walked towards Natasha, Las Vegas. After the episode with Hulk, Richard used teleportation all the way to the famous Las Vegas, ready to experience the customs of the gambling city. And by the way, see if he can plunder some superpowers that interest him here. Unlike before, he did not look for uninhabited cabins near Las Vegas, but came directly to the center of Las Vegas. To be precise, he came to the roof of a casino building. Las Vegas is surrounded by desolate deserts and Gobi, and there are no forests. This means that he can't borrow a holiday cabin in the forest of a middle-class family as before. However, this is not a particularly big problem for him. He didn't live in the city center before, not because he didn't have the ability to disguise himself, but because the forest with few people is more suitable for practicing his skills. If he wants to live in the city center, he can live in the city center, but it will be relatively more troublesome, for example, to disguise himself. After thinking about it, he still adopted the previous camouflage plan of sunglasses and peaked cap. His flowing silver hair is indeed very eye-catching, but he is not particularly worried about it. Speaking of this, we have to talk about his fanatical fans. After the Los Angeles branch incident, a group of fanatical fans who worship him appeared in Los Angeles. Although 3 months have passed, the number of his fanatical fans has not only not decreased, but has increased. The reason for this is that the Mutant Affairs Department has spared no effort to promote him. On the other hand, it is because the United States is a very psychedelic country. In the United States, as long as you are handsome, or have a unique personality or outstanding abilities, you can gain your own fans. Even serial killers and criminals have fans who worship them. Before crossing, Richard had seen a lot of news on the internet about American criminals who gained a group of fanatical female fans because of their handsomeness. At that time, he would never have thought that he would have a large group of fanatical fans. If his fanatical fans were limited to Los Angeles after the Los Angeles branch incident, the personal websites and forums opened for him by these fanatical fans were just small websites and local forums in Los Angeles. Now, the personal website and forum that originally looked rough has developed into a popular website and forum with a lot of popularity and registered members all over the United States. Richard also registered an account on the website and forum. However, he did not reveal his true identity, nor did he post on it. He just occasionally went to see what his group of fanatical fans were doing recently. Let's talk about the issue of long silver hair. A large part of his fanatical fans, especially those with long hair, dyed their hair silver. Even if they are not his fanatical fans, many people dyed their hair silver after seeing the videos about him. The fanatical fans in the San Francisco protest are a good example. Taking out sunglasses and a peaked cap from the system space and putting them on, Richard performed teleportation and left the roof of the casino building. P.S. Thanks to the book Friend 2021 *****4984 for the reward. Thank you for your support. Chapter 50 Threatening Magneto. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rescue Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. After seeing the newly released tasks from the system, Richard frowned slightly. He knew that there would definitely be Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in this world, but he did not expect that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver would now be imprisoned by the Hellfire Club. Do you want to threaten Magneto? After reading the mission content, Richard's first reaction was that the Hellfire Club wanted to threaten Magneto through Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, but soon, he overturned this guess. Magneto doesn't even know that he has twins, and the Hellfire Club is even less likely to know. In addition, Magneto is not someone who is easily threatened, even though Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are his children, if Professor Gambit couldn't see the mission information that appeared in front of Richard. Like a holographic projection screen, but he could see Richard's expression. "Am I not welcome to join the game?" Gambit King asked Richard. After hearing Gambit's words, Richard closed the task panel and replied calmly, "Has anyone ever told you that your smile is quite greasy?" What? Gambler originally thought that Richard just didn't want to join the game. Unexpectedly, Richard actually complained about his smile. "Greasy? I've never heard anyone say this. I only know that there are many women who like my smile." After saying that, the Card King raised his eyebrows at the female dealer who dealt the cards. The female dealer who deals the cards is not the sexy dealer that often appears on scam websites, she is just a little prettier than ordinary passers-by. After seeing the Card King raising an eyebrow at her, the female dealer ignored him and asked Richard and another gambler if they should continue the game. Obviously, the female dealer is not the kind of little girl who will be easily fooled by the greasy smile of the Card King. Richard nodded and signaled the game to continue. Another gambler did the same and chose to continue the game. After discovering that neither Richard nor the female dealer gave him much face, Gambit King threw out his chips and joined the game. Like the previous card games, Richard did not use his superpowers. Although he didn't know whether Gambit had used superpowers, he had no intention of using superpowers to cheat in such an inconsequential card game. Time passes little by little. Less than 20 minutes passed. Another gambler lost all his chips, leaving only Richard and Gambit to gamble. When only he and Richard were left on the card table, the Card King suddenly asked Richard, "Have you also received an invitation? Invite? Could it just be an invitation from the Hellfire Club?" After hearing the invitation mentioned by Gambit King, Richard's first reaction was the invitation from Hellfire Club. He would immediately suspect the Hellfire Club, partly because the Hellfire Club was mentioned in the mission just released by the system. On the other hand, he remembered that the Hellfire Club in the movie had a secret base in Las Vegas. If Gambit doesn't have the ability to isolate his mind, he will definitely use telepathy on Gambit, but it's a pity that Gambit has telepathy. Although there was no way to determine what the invitation the King of Gambling was talking about, he did not show any surprise or curiosity and replied calmly, "I don't think I need to tell you." After hearing Richard's answer, Gambit King's tone became unhappy. "Boy, I shouldn't have offended you, right? Don't be too arrogant at a young age. You're still called a young man if you're not full of energy." Richard glanced at the Card King and threw the trump card in front of him to the female dealer, indicating that he would not follow this one. Gambit King suppressed his displeasure and continued, "If you are really so smart, would you take off your hat and sunglasses?" On the surface, Gambit is using aggressive tactics, but Richard knew that Gambit was not provoking him, but recognized him. Although Gambit cannot telepathize and can only isolate his mind, this does not mean that Gambit cannot recognize him. "You're not qualified enough to ask me to take off my hat and sunglasses," Richard said to Gambit King. "I won't say whether I'm qualified or not. I just know that as long as I name a name, I can get you into big trouble." Gambit King quickly replied, "If you want to say something, you can just say it. By the way, I also know one thing, that is, after you finish speaking, the person in big trouble will definitely not be me, but you. If you don't believe it, can you try it?" Richard picked up a chip in front of him and threw it into the center of the card table. If his strength allows, Gambit really wants to teach Richard a lesson and let him know what it means to respect the old and love the young, but unfortunately, he does not have such strength. He is quite confident in his own strength, but he is not arrogant enough to deal with Richard. Before coming to the casino, he saw reports on the fight between Richard and Hulk on the internet and videos uploaded by melon-eating people. Although he was not at the scene, after seeing those videos, especially after seeing Richard summoning meteorites to hit Hulk, he knew that he would definitely not be Richard's opponent. In his opinion, Richard could easily destroy an entire city just by summoning meteorites. He didn't think he was weak, but he wasn't arrogant enough to think he could defeat Richard. Looking at Richard, who was unmoved, the King of Cards picked up a round chip and let it roll between the fingers of his right hand. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "It seems that today is not a good day for a big bet. You can play slowly." After that, the King of Cards picked up the chips in front of him, stood up and left the gambling table. Richard didn't care whether the King of Cards would go to other gambling tables or leave the casino directly. After the King of Cards left, he sat in a chair and waited for a few minutes. After finding that no one was willing to come and gamble with him, he sighed helplessly, picked up the chips and went to the exchange window to exchange the chips for cash. Then, he left the casino with more than 100,000 cash he won. Caesar's Palace Hotel. After leaving the casino, Richard went straight to the famous Caesar's Palace Hotel and checked in at the hotel. Although he is now an S-level wanted criminal of the Mutant Affairs Department and has no way to provide legal identification to the front desk staff, this is not a very troublesome thing. He just used telepathy a little bit, and the blonde receptionist, who was wearing a tight black dress and showed off her graceful curves, used her ID to help him check in. Not only that, when the good-looking receptionist handed him the room card, she also handed him a business card. "I get off work at 6 o'clock, and I can take leave tomorrow and the next 2 days," the receptionist said softly in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Although the receptionist was pretty good-looking, she could get about 7 points out of 10, but Richard didn't want to have a deep communication with her. This is the Marvel Universe. Even if you want to have a deep communication with the opposite sex about the origin of life, at least you have to have a deep communication with those famous female heroes and female villains. At the very least, you should be like Tony Stark, with female stars, supermodels, famous female reporters, magazine cover girls, etc., instead of with the receptionist who is not stunning and has no status halo. Richard came to the newly opened business suite with the room card and sat down on the sofa. In the living room, thinking about rescuing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Although the system issued the task of rescuing them, it did not provide detailed information. He now only knew 2 pieces of information. One was that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were being held by the Hellfire Club, the other was that the invitation mentioned by the King of Cards might be an invitation from the Hellfire Club.